Today I have got a little mini series that I'm going to be doing, and the reason this is going to be a mini series is because I can't fit this all into one video, but I will be ranking all animated Scooby Doo movies ever done, and this is just my take on all the movies, and this is including the 4 TV movies that they did, as well as the 33 direct-to-video movies that have been released by Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera. And at number 37, we have Scooby Doo Arabian Nights from 1994. And this movie was not that good. It's still, to date, one of the, well, actually is the only movie that I have never actually finished. I got partway through this movie and it was just so bad I could not finish the movie. And that's why this movie is so low. Even though I do like the made-for-TV movies, this one is definitely the worst one ever done out of the 4. And we'll see the other 3 later on in this video. But at number 36, we have Scooby Doo Return to Zombie Island, which is the latest movie released by Warner Brothers, and this movie was very bad. It feels like a 40-minute normal Scooby Doo movie, and then it's a movie inside of a movie, which was pretty bad, and this just turned out really bad. If you guys want just more detail on this movie, check out my rant video that I did on this movie a few months ago. And then number 35, we have Scooby Doo and WWE Curse of the Speed Demon from 2016. This was a good, interesting idea, but Scooby Doo, WWE, and racing don't mix at all. Now, if you do Scooby Doo and WWE, that mixes perfectly fine. Racing and Scooby Doo, again, perfectly fine. But throwing all 3 things into one movie, not a good idea. And that's why this is at number 35 on my list of movie rankings. And then number 34 is another racing movie with Scooby Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf from 1988. And the reason this is so low is not entirely because of the movie itself, but because of the length of the movie. And that's an hour and a half long runtime, filled with about at least probably 80 to 90% of the entire movie is filled with just the racing part of this movie, which is interesting, but it takes up just too much of the time, and the story isn't that great. And then at number 33, we have Scooby Doo and the Ghoul School from 1988, which, again, same problem with Reluctant Werewolf is runtime. I think this one's an hour and 20 minutes, maybe. And it just suffers from that same effect that basically all the Messick era movies suffered from, which was the fact that they only had Scooby Doo and Shaggy. Well, these 2, Ghoul School and Reluctant Werewolf, had Scrappy Doo as well, but it's like they didn't have the whole Scooby Gang in them, so that's why these 2 movies are really low on my list of favorites. And then at 33, we have Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico, which this one is my least favorite What's New Scooby Doo movie. That was this style of the movies was started with Legend of the Vampire, which we'll see later in this series. But this one was just a touring video, basically a touring movie from Mexico, and a giant purple Bigfoot as the monster is a real shame. And that's why this movie is at 32 on my list. I'm just gonna check this over here. I lost track of it, but this 4-pack. Yep, 32. And then 31, we have Scooby Doo and the Gourmet Ghost, which is pretty bad. It's a nice take on something a little different, but it's another one of those typical crossover Scooby Doo movies that they love to do now, which doesn't feel like Warner Brothers comes up with an original idea for the movies anymore. So that's why I really don't care for the newer movies. And this, just like Return to Zombie Island, is one of the worst ones that they've done. And I just don't see that entirely as how this could pull off as a movie. And the only reason I pretty much got this was just to complete my collection. I don't know if I'll ever watch this again. I did watch it basically a few weeks after it came out on DVD. But other than that, I've actually never watched that movie, and that was a couple years ago. And so, on to the next one. For this ranking, we have Scooby Doo Stage Fright, which is another musical. And this came out in 2013. And it was pretty bad because it basically did what a lot of the newer movies do. And that is focus on romance of some sort. And I'm not a big fan of this movie in particular because of that romance factor. Because if the romance takes away from the mystery, it takes away from the entire movie. And that's exactly what Scooby Doo Stage Fright did, was take away from the mystery aspect and just made it a music competition, which wasn't that good of an idea. And then next on this list, we've got Scooby Doo Goes Hollywood, which was the first Scooby Doo direct-to-video TV special movie. I don't know if it wasn't really a direct-to-video movie, but it was the first TV special that they did. And this one was really, really good. I really loved this movie. The reason I ranked this so low is because I don't really feel that it stood the test of time compared to other movies that they've released for Scooby-Doo. And that's just why this movie drops so low on this ranking. And then finally we have Aloha Scooby-Doo from 2005, which was a good idea for it, but awfully executed movie and way too predictable, which usually all Scooby-Doo movies are predictable. It's gotten worse over the years, but this is kind of where it started to get predictable. And even when I watched this for the first time ever, I could tell right away who the bad person was in this movie, which usually it takes me a couple watches through, if that made any sense to you guys, but a couple times watching the movie to figure out who the bad person is. But with this one, I was able to get it in like the first 20 minutes of the movie. So that's got to be a record for me, and that's partly why this is in the bottom third of my movie rankings. So you guys can tell me your thoughts on this first ranking in the comments section below, and just like and subscribe for more, because I will do more in the future.